like Alice comes like to the tea party and starts looking around at all the things that are happening, and she actually, I feel Alice is the one that kind of starts the conflict
Mm,
in terms of so they offer her they offer her wine. um, she looks around, she doesn't see any wine. um, or she tells them, I don't see any wine. And they say, well, there isn't any. And then she angrily says, well, then it's not very civil of you to offer it. And then that gets the hair going. And then the Mad Hatter jumps in. And they just kind of prod each other, I feel, a little bit to just escalate this frustration that's just kind of surrounding this table, which is the opposite, right? Like if you opposite of what you should do at a tea party, where if you partake in one, it needs to be civilized. You need to avoid anything that would be seen as taboo or anything that would be confrontational.
mm.
So I think that's the first instance that just tells us how this tea party specifically is mad and the opposite of everything you would expect a normal tea party to be.
Yeah, and actually, I think that's part of the reason that maybe this is such a memorable chapter,
Mm,
because it's kind of throwing total chaos into a situation that should be the height of civility, but
mm,
the height of kind of absurd civility, like the idea that okay, now it's tea time. So when it's tea time or when we're having a tea party, we all need to sit in certain places. We need to hold our cups in a certain way. We need to sort of make conversation and make remarks, but we're doing it in a very conscious way.
right.
You're not. It's not like even casual small talk. It's like carefully thought out small talk because you don't want to say anything that will possibly offend anyone. You don't want to say anything on a controversial topic like politics. So the reason that people will try to do that is to make the atmosphere pleasant, to make the atmosphere civil. But actually, in the act of doing that, it creates a lot of tension in the air.
Right.
It's not like it's the opposite of a relaxed atmosphere.
That's a great
Kind of,
point. Yeah.
kind of a little bit on edge, which suggests that there's this. They find ways to maybe be rude, and this is a very English thing,
Huh.
uh, by it, while still remaining polite through like subtle implications or like cutting remarks, things like that. They maybe give a
Right.
compliment, but you can kind of tell from their tone, or you're not sure whether they really mean the compliment or whether they really mean it as a way to say like, oh, doesn't your hair look nice? And then maybe the subtext is
Right.
actually that looks really bad. So I'm talking, just to clarify, about actual tea parties in Victorian
Mm,
society here. But that's not what we see here.
mm.
What we see here, like you said, is what total sort of madness.
Yeah. Um, well, it's conversation to that seeks heightened feelings
Mm.
versus like you were talking about before. It's almost like more party type conversation versus tea party conversation, and I think that's an interesting one, a distinction to make. Because in a party, yeah, you would try to you're trying to get people experiencing a heightened degree of emotions, whether it's joy or anger, um, and it kind of fits that a little bit more.
Yeah, you're like so yeah, when you say what I was saying before, Mr. Tony and I will generally talk about these chapters before we start the podcast and
Right.
various observations. So yeah, one of the things we were saying is it reminds us of like a college party or a frat party or like a teenage party, young adult party where people are really just letting loose. And those can be really fun. The idea of like you play music, you dance,
Mm,
you're eating and drinking. People really behave in an uncensored way so that they can be more relaxed and kind of get to know each other and vent or express their emotions. But that can also have kind of a dark edge where people like things that would not be acceptable in regular society. Uh, become acceptable in the party atmosphere. Uh, so you might get away with being ruder to someone or starting a conflict that, like, because some tension has been building up in your normal life. And so, yeah, we've both been to parties like this. Maybe you more than me. I'm interested
Yeah.
if you have some anecdotes.
Oh, because like, yeah, I've been to a tea party. I've been to a party, both. Like when you go to a tea party, there's things you can expect. So like, I have two sisters in London, an older and a younger one. And not sisters, sorry. I have two aunts in London. Father's older and younger sister. And yeah, so we would go through tea parties, and you can expect, like, when you sit down, they will offer you something, so you don't even need to ask. So they'll offer, can I make tea for you, would you like raspberry or blackberry jam? So like in that initial conversation, them not having anything reminds me very much like a party. Like you go to a party and it's like, oh, I don't want anything alcoholic, do you have a Coke? And they might offer something like, oh, we have Cokes. And then you're like, okay, I'll take one. And then they go and look and they're like, nah, sorry, actually, we don't have any. It's just stuff like this is more apt to happen in this type of setting. But I think
It's
also,
wild.
like, yeah, but I also think too, you get friends that try to, like, especially if you're somebody who's new to this kind of thing, like two friends are just going to come after you like
Mhm.
um not necessarily to make you feel like you're having a bad time, but because it's just hilarious for them. So they'll just play on your naiveness or try to make you seem like you're foolish.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I like, so basically what you're saying is that, at a party with friends, people
Yeah.
might give you some stick, might like prod you a little bit, make fun of you a little bit. Um,
Right.
but in a way that isn't, I want to start a fist fight with you, is more like we're just having fun here. And I think
I,
that's very much a guy thing. It's kind of the way we bond. Like the Mad Hatter and the March Hare are like are constantly arguing here and kind of insulting each other, but they seem to be bros. Like
right.
they spend their entire lives at this tea party with each other, along with the Dormouse. But yeah, I think interestingly in this chapter we see the dynamic of these three male characters
Mm.
versus Alice. And I think their mode of rudeness is distinctly male, in contrast to some other characters like the Duchess, whom we've already met, and the Red Queen,
Yep.
shortly.
And like I was looking at this example in the passage when they're talking about the function of a watch, and like, Alice comments like on the Mad Hatter, oh, what a strange watch, and he's like, um what does he say? Oh, what a funny watch, she remarked. It tells the day of the month, and it doesn't tell the o'clock it is. And then he kind of responds by saying, oh, does your watch tell you what year it is? And it's like, well, so what? And is that because it stays the same year for such a long time? Um, so yeah, I think they're just trying to get Alice to, yeah, they're just prompting Alice by saying like nonsensical things about how functions of watches work, just to frustrate her, and it's working.
Yeah, if you
And they're
want to
both
annoy
loving
somebody,
it.
and like, or if you're a cruel, you're the popular group, and there's someone you want to just torment who's an outsider, who's like doesn't kind of get your whole thing and what you're doing.
Right.
This is a pretty good way to do it. I'm not recommending that because it's awful, but like it's you can see Alice getting very frustrated with them here, and
Mm-hmm.
they can see that, and that just sort of makes them do it even more.
Mm.
So it's a kind of teasing,
Right.
but are they doing it consciously to bother Alice, or is this just seems to be the only way they know how to communicate? So
Yeah, I think so,
and
because they're doing it to each other as well.
yeah, so I mean, is another interesting question here is, are they playing roles, like social roles here?
Mm.
And again, the way you may play a role with your friends, like oh, I'm gonna pretend to be dumber than I am with this group of friends because it's funny.
Right.
Are they doing that, or is the Hatter, is he totally actually mad? Like, does he just not understand the things Alice is saying? He's not able to make any kind of rational connections in his mind at all. He's just completely insane.
That's a
Not
great question.
human
Yeah.
language.
And I wish it was a character that would show up more throughout the story, but
Well, he
we
can't.
never
He
get
can't
that
make
resolution.
Well, he
Yeah.
comes back, I think, at the end, right at the trial. Don't they
Oh
also?
yeah, that's right. Oh, he was, yeah, because the queen was going to cut off his head.
Yeah. Well, that's every single that you could say that about every character, and including the queen herself. She was going to cut off her own head at one point, which is a detail
Oh, I
in
forgot that.
chapter 8,
Oh,
which is a kind of blink and you'll miss it detail.
oh, I missed it. I can't wait to go back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. So we've kind of talked a little bit about like her initial interactions with the Hare and the Mad Hatter, and how they're trying. For me, again, it's different interpretations. Either they're trying to prod her to be more frustrated and more angry, or they're just taking on personalities. You know, being that party mentality, trying to be fun and outgoing and um, like, and I guess maybe it's a cultural thing, you know, like we try to make people relax by getting them agitated. It's like then like once they're frustrated, then we're like, ah, oh, sit down, relax. We're just making a little fun of you. We're just trying to get used to you. We're kind of trying to be more comfortable. I don't know. And again, you could talk about like the Victorian society too. Maybe Carol witnessed, you know, like in being an upper class, like yeah, affiliating with many upper class people, how much time they engage in pleasantries versus how much actual practical things that they do.
Yeah. I mean, talking about the life of, let's say, an upper class person,
Mm,
and Carol would have been in the orbit of people like this. And,
right.
for instance, the real Alice's mother would have been some kind of, I'm not sure whether she was actually a titled aristocrat, but some sort of
Mm,
very wealthy, high status gentry. And Carol would go and visit these people at their houses and things like that. So you think about the idea of a social class that isn't really supposed to do anything. Their job
right.
is to,
Mhm.
just like you say, simply engage in ceremonies and pleasantries that are pointless, um, and kind of meaningless. And perhaps that's what Carol is saying here. So they engage, like you say, in the form of certain things you're supposed to do at a party. Like they tell riddles. How is a raven like a writing desk? They tell anecdotes or stories about the two girls who lived in a well full of treacle, which is a kind of syrup. They make what are supposed to be sort of witty remarks, but they're actually
Mm.
totally nonsensical. And all of these things are sort of pointless and nonsensical. So perhaps, as we said, that's part of the satire. And the satire here would then be aimed, it
Mm.
seems, at the upper classes and the way they've lived their lives.
It ties in very much with the caucus race we talked before. Something that, you know, if you were upper class in the Victorian era, politics is a huge part of your conversation. You know, if you're in like if you're in the working class, it's just, you know, it's like it doesn't matter, no matter who gets voted in. It's not going to make a big difference for you. Um, so like yeah, we had the nonsensical nature of politics, and yeah, this seems to be like just pointing out the society itself, and the mannerisms in which people live, and the pointlessness of that. And maybe, you know, like Carol is trying to get us to kind of feel Alice as like himself being frustrated with the politics and the society he lives in. This frustration is coming out through Alice, in this wonderland of yeah, increasingly violent, increasingly dangerous, and um, crazy happenings that's kind of going through.